Good morning. It's the 1st of April 2025, traditionally April Fool's Day. And by right, I should have a Val's Pictorial Weekly, which is a funny sketch, not based on any reality. My computer is on its way, should have it by Friday. I was out of computer, and you see, without the computer, I can't do the introduction, that signature tune, which somebody identified as by a composer. You know that do 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 do. That one. Anyway, if I don't have something for 1st of April, well, sure, we'll have it coming soon. I also hope to have, as we approach Easter, for those of you who might know about St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick's Day date, the 17th of March, is such that it can never fall after Easter. It never falls on Easter week or after Easter. It's always before Easter, which is very well organised. I mean, whatever about the church and all that in the time gone past, it was very good at organising stuff like that. Very, very good. This is about electricity. And maybe a few people contact me and they want me to pray on the thing. I don't want to be all religious, and I know there are people who feel that too much religion can be as bad as too little. But we might do a few prayers coming up to Easter, and we'll have a wee bit of a spiritual time then coming up to that, and that should help that thing. So, that way of thinking. Now, what I want to deal with here, folks, is, as I say to people, and they all agree, this is not me saying, "Oh, I'm Val Martin. I'm smart fella." I'm not. That's not really what that's not. That might be the put on thing, but that's not really what it's about. It's about the fact that everywhere I go, I meet people and they're dying for a chat and they want to know my take on a thing. And generally speaking, my take is fairly good. So that wouldn't be needed if we didn't have the fake news like radio, television, and the media, and the lies of them, the open lies of them. It's just phenomenal. Now, those that don't know me too, I am against all this renewable energy. I'm the Irish spokesman for the European Platform Against Wind Farms, and we deal with that. And this is kind of touching on this. Now, this video is prompted by my own experience and by a letter, because above all, I'm trying to help people. And this letter came from a person living in the northeast of the Republic. That could be from, we'll say, Lavey in Cavan across to Dundalk and down to, we'll say, Drogheda across to Mullingar. That kind of a general area. Maybe not that far west as Mullingar. And what this person writes, and needless to say, never ever would I identify a person. I'd never do that. I'd rather be dead than to break the trust of keeping confidence. So this person, my ESB bill is getting to a point where it's unmanageable. My last bill was over €1,000. Now I rang the person, and this is for a 2-month period. Now the way it is in rural Ireland, they rarely come around reading the bill. I saw a van. I happened to be in Dundalk in County Louth yesterday, and I saw a meter reading van. But they normally don't go around. Now you can dial in your reading. It's like people getting the petrol and the diesel at the pumps. Would you believe it? The people supplying their own diesel at the pump are more accurate and less inclined to add a bit extra fuel than the attendants. People are very honest that way. Very honest. And I see along the road things like eggs and honey and jam left out, and a wee thing for you putting in your money, and I don't think anyone ever takes a pot without putting in money. So, you can trust people to a certain amount. Now the thing is, you can dial in your ESB bill. There are several ways of doing it. Maybe I'd post underneath here how to do it. If you have the internet, Google how to get your bill reading, and you can email it in. There's several ways. And they accept that, and then they come out now and again and they have a look at it. And sure, I don't be here half the time. They could be coming here, and I don't be here half the time, and I have the place all locked up, so it's not a problem. Now, modern houses have a box that you can open. Okay, now there's a triangular thing, and there's a special key. Now you can use a socket. oh, I should have had this done. This is another failure of mine. I had posted underneath, there is a socket. I think it's an 8mm socket that'll open those. It fits in on it. You see, there's 3 little lugs on the bolt that you twist. And there's nothing where you can do this. You're perfectly entitled to do this. The cover's only on it to keep the weather out. There's 3 little, there's a triangular shape nut. No, a bolt comes out. And there's a key to fit it. But any socket that's the right size will fit it. And I might post it underneath. I suspect it's an 8mm will fit it. And if you're buying sockets, my advice is always buy the ones with 6 hexagons inside, not the ones with 12, because they tend to slip. The one with the 6 corners on it, are the ones I'd buy. Anyway, you won't be long finding out, and we might post it underneath. There's a neighbour's house today. I can tip down and check it, and just check which socket. Anyway, you can open it and check it. Now, that's the first thing. Now, the next thing is, so he says, I'm considering installing electric panels on my roof, solar panels, to cut the cost. Now, I'll deal with that now, and I've spoken to the person, and that's all right. So electricity prices have gone up because we were lied to, Lied, by the Green Party, Eamon Ryan. I want to meet him again. I've met him before. And Roderick O'Gorman, all lied. It's a win-win. Wind turbines bring down the cost of electricity. I've shown that they do not. That's all direct and deliberate misinformation put about by the media, including Radio Television Éireann. Okay, that's a lie. How can you run a system that used to have one system, one set of generators, one set of wires, and you feed that in, and you give everyone electricity? How can you run that with a duplicate system where for every megawatt of conventional generation you have wind turbines, and they don't run only 20% of the time? So somebody has to pay for them, and unfortunately I've tried to explain long-windedly how the scam is done, that we have to pay for it in our bills, and your electricity keeps going up. There's no point me doing any more on that. I've done enough on it. We'll do one again in a few months if people really want to understand how they're being ripped off by the green energy racket. Okay, so again, it's electricity supply is the name of it. Now, I know lots of people with solar panels. Solar panels are all right. Put them on the roof or where you like. If you use them to heat a drop of hot water for shaving, for showering, they could technically bring up the temperature of the water a few degrees, so that if you're heating your house, you won't have to put so much initial heat in. Now, they could get rid of an immersion heater, except for in the coldest, snowy winter days. They could get rid of the need to have an immersion heater, although you'll find you'll keep it for emergency purposes when you have to have a shower or go somewhere and there's no sun or it's dark at night. Solar panels don't work at night. So the general view, and I have some electricians who are going to talk to me honestly about it, they don't regret putting them in from that point of view. Now, there again, if you have a household, if there's a couple in the house and maybe 4 kids, it might actually pay a bit better because they'd be showering more. They won't cook. They won't heat the house as such. They won't operate lighting. So that's the trouble. Now, the thing is, some might say, oh, you can put batteries up and they'll store the electricity. They might, but for every hour charging the battery, you'll only get an hour taken out. So, for example, with the wind energy, if you had a very windy day on Monday and you had a load of batteries, millions of tons of batteries in Ireland, you'd have a little bit of electricity. And the wind stopped, we'll say, 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning. You'd have a little electricity to carry on maybe till 10 or 11 o'clock, and then they'd run out. The storage is very limited. It can't take out any more than goes in, and it takes time to put it in. Now, there's another very important point with solar panels. Some of them are advertised as feeding into the ESB. Now, I don't honestly know the attitude of the ESB, but the last time I heard, they didn't want anyone connecting their panels to the electricity grid and paying for it. The same with micro wind turbines. It's too much trouble. Now, no wind farm gives a net output of electricity. Wind farms are net consumers of electricity when measured over a year. Solar farms are essentially the same. They may produce a little more in that case because they don't have such big requirement for power. Wind turbines are like washing machines. They need a terrible big amount of power to run them. So you have that. Now, if you put a little micro wind turbine up in the house and you pay it into the grid, if they do allow you on that, well, you're winning because the consumer gets nothing. It's too erratic. The original electricity grid has to be kept, and the original fossil fuel generation has to be kept running there, irrespective of what you do. So they're a scam from the point of view of connecting to the grid. But if you can get away with it and you think you can do it, go ahead and you get your money back from the ESB and you're getting a check. And that check comes directly out of the electricity bills of people like this man, people like you and I. I have two houses, and I have the old farmhouse where I do these videos, and I have my own family home. And so you can see that ordinary consumers are paying for this green stuff that is no good. And this is failing all over the world. We can see it in Europe. It's brought down industry all over Europe and Britain. They don't want to admit it, and they probably never will. Now, there is another very important point about solar panels. You got to make sure that if you're signing up with a company, and the internet is all solar, they're pushing solar. If you sign up for a solar company, you want to watch the fine print. There has been several cases in England where people signed up to have these things installed on their roof. They signed up to put this on the deed of the house, or on the registration of the house, or on the title of the house, and there's a mortgage on the house. So in other words, if you took out a mortgage on your house and you were married and you reared your family and you pay off your mortgage, when the mortgage is paid off, you get the deeds entirely. You're the full owner. You can do with what you wish. But if you look, and you can go into landdirect.ie, there's two forms of registration of land in Ireland. There's the deed system where you have to go to Dublin, and there's the land registry system where you go into Land Direct and you can get the folio there. You'll see that any burden, any mortgage, or any limit on the ownership of this is written on the folio. Understand? So you want to watch that they don't get permission from you to insert on the folio. This property ownership is John Henry McCracken of 2 Belturbet Road, Cavan, or whatever it might be. And he's the full owner, subject to the fact that the mineral rights are not given, the mining rights. The fishery rights are not part of it, that doesn't matter much. And that the ABCDEF Solar Limited of 13 Newmarket, Cork, or whatever it is, have the right to maintain the solar panels there for 30 years or maybe forever. Once that goes on your property, your property reduces in value because the new owner is not at liberty to do with what they wish. Moreover, if there come a leak in the roof, how are you going to fix the roof without taking down the solar panels? And roofs do leak, you get high winds. Also, if there come a heavy shower of hailstones, it could break them, it destroyed them in America. So you need to have that matter clarified. Who fixes it if there is a hailstone shower or an incident or something falls on it? But that's one thing. But the other thing is, are you prepared to compromise your deeds and your title of your house for this? Are you? Watch for that. One person in Britain, in England, got them in. I think it was something like €29,000 sterling the cost, and got them in. And when he had them in, he went to sell the house. Something changed. He decided to move to near where his daughter got married or something, and to sell the house and to downsize. And when they went to sell it, the first thing the auctioneer asked was, are there any labourers on it? House was up for sale. They got a good offer. They're said to close. When they went to check the documents, the new buyer discovered that the solar panels had a grip on the folio, that they wouldn't have full control of the house at all. In fact, in that one, any amendments or anything to the structure of the house would have to get the sanction of the solar company. The result is the new owner was not prepared to buy it at all. He wanted a complete fee simple is the right name for it, or as we simply call a freehold. He wanted full unencumbered possession, and this meant that for the rest of his life he was stuck with his house with this solar company. You don't know what could happen in future. What happens if they go into liquidation? What happens if they sell on to a big crowd like BlackRock or Vanguard Investments or some of them, and then they start needling you about something? Or what if there's a condition that you have to keep the roof perfect, that you could have this solar company telling you what to do with your own property? You need to watch that big time. When your man discovered what they'd done to him, he was ripping mad, but there was nothing he could do. My very considered advice is, when it comes to anything Irish government talks about energy, or indeed anything, but particularly about energy, renewable energy and all that, treat it all as lies. They are open liars. They never sat down with me and discussed any of this. Imagine me coming out and saying publicly that the Ireland's wind farms are net consumers of electricity when measured over a year, and nobody challenges me. When you think they challenge me. And don't forget, there's a Strategic Environmental Assessment Directive from the EU that these stuffs are supposed to be assessed under Article 3.2. And they won't do it. Okay? They're using a clause in that directive to say it doesn't apply to budgetary matters. That means the annual budget. And they're using that to get out of it, which was never meant for that purpose. Just the same as in another environmental directive, it excludes defence, military and defence, which is understandable. And it's the same thing. There's a get out. They allow a get out, and it never was tested in the European Court of Justice. So I wouldn't believe the Lord's Prayer from any of them. Now, I want to, and they're pushing it too much for it to be true. And there's no independent survey or anything, because they have shut down the ability to have an independent assessment by engineers under the SEA directive. That's the legal requirement, and that's not done. So, for example, if you need planning permission for these, I tell you that I don't think you do, but if you do, they should be covered by that assessment to say what benefit they do and all that. So the best way to treat it is it's all lies until you hear more. Now, that I myself might consider solar panels to run electric fences. They do work for that, where the load is very little. They charge a battery of a tractor or a car. So you can buy little ones, 12-volt ones, and experiment with them. Maybe I would do that sometime. They do kind of work. They're not a complete dead. They take the heat from the sun, from which all energy derives, and all except tidal energy, and they convert it. But it's very, very weak. It's very, very weak. We're 93 million miles away from the sun. Right, enough said there. I think I've given you enough food for thought. Where will you get expert advice? Well, you needn't be going to the companies. And it's like these heat pumps. I claim they're a scam as well. And there's very good evidence to show they're a scam. They're simply electric central heating. And during the storm, when the electricity went off, they didn't work at all in January this year. I think it was January, 24th of January, I think. Now, I've dealt with that. Now, I want to deal with another very important point. You need to watch that there isn't a leak in your electricity system. And I'm going to relate to you a tale. There's a very good family I know living in the Irish Midlands, a bit away from me, and their bills was very high. And one day they were helping me with the wind energy thing. There was one Tretton over there, and I'm kind of friendly with the man of the house. I knew him. He was a greyhound. He had greyhounds. Oh, we had fun. We had great fun, but he's passed away. But anyway, the thing about it is that there was a very high bill, and money was scarce enough, and they had got a few electricians to have a look, and none could see anything wrong. So I'd be busy, but I was called in anyway, and I have to stop all that doing jobs for people because I just can't do it. So I applied my logic to it, and what I did was, there was a whole heap of trip switches, the usual thing. It wasn't the modern board, it was that whatever you call it. It was one before that, but it wasn't the old fuses either. Anyway, I waited. They said, will you come over and have a look at it? And I said, I will. And I called in and I looked at it. Right, will you do something? Well, I said, when are you going away? So there was this time they were going away for a few days over to visit someone in Britain or somewhere in England, I think it was. And I said, leave the key for me. And they left out the key. I wanted nobody there, only me. So I got in there nicely, and they left a room for me and all, and I got in. I could make all the tea I wanted, and I could go out to the local place for a bit to eat. And first thing I did was I looked at the meter and it was going round. I turned off everything, and it was still going round. Now, I forgot to tell you, there were reports in wet weather of there being a shock of the electric kettle in the back kitchen. The electric kettle had a shock, and mostly in wet weather. And the reason of that is, in wet weather, people get their feet wet and their shoes wet, and you're more conductive down to the earth. And the negative is usually earthed out of the pole. So I can't remember, did I feel the shock myself, but it was come and go anyway. But anyway, I started, and I eliminated everything until I was down with nothing. And when I had everything out, I took out the main fuse. I think it was the main fuse, yeah. I'm not just too sure. You could turn it down which side of the meter it was, but anyway, the meter was there, and I had everything down, and surely enough, it was just going round. And there's a wee white spot on the wheel of the meter. It was going round. That meant there was power being lost somewhere. Redone the test a few times, definitely power being lost. You could turn off every appliance and there was still power being lost. And it was a big job because some of them I had to go into rooms and different things, and awkward enough to do, but I got it done anyway. So I knew there was a leak. So the question was, where was it? And it took me a long time to investigate, and a bit of trial and error. And eventually I come to the conclusion that it was going into the back kitchen. And I had to try and ring them in England to find out a wee bit about the history of it. And I had to do a bit of hoking. I had to cut the gyp boards out. And with a bit of, I can't remember exactly all the moves I made, but I was able to disconnect the wires up on the junction box and put a temporary supply in, and even put a 12-volt battery connector to it and try a different way to see would it light a bulb and all of that. And eventually I concluded that the mains was touching the earth somewhere. And I rang back again and I said, was there ever anyone going around here with a nail gun? And they said, well, there was a fella doing a bit of work here and he had a nail gun. And so I dug a bit further and I spotted that he put the nail gun up against the plasterboard or whatever it was, the wooden lat, bang, in goes the nail, and it skirted the mains, the live of the mains, and nailed it to a stone in the wall. And that meant there was a very thin but effective connection between the mains and the house earth. And it wasn't enough to trip the switch as far as I know, but it meant that there was a leak down. And that was coming through the earth of the kettle. And of course, stopped all, pulled out the nail, sealed it up with a bit of tape or whatever, and tested her again, and everything was perfect. Now, watch for this. Listen to me again now. You turn off everything. You look at your meter, get your meter box open, or whatever way you have it, a little socket will open the meter. You might do it with a pointy nose pliers. You're better off buying a socket. I'll post underneath here later today what which socket actually fits it if I get a chance. It'll be here. I think it's an 8mm. Or maybe corresponding imperial. Now, so the thing is that you put off everything and see is it going round. If it's going round, you have a leak. And finding that leak, then you'll have to throw every switch, and you might find you see, in the case of this one, it was only when the work was done. If I had to be wiser again, what work was done on this house in the last 20 years? And that extension to the kitchen was the only thing. Get me point? So, but I had it kind of twigged anyway. So anyway, not everyone is up to this type of electricity thing. God be good to my father and my uncle. They could wire a house. Several houses in the area are wired by my father and my uncle. He used to go off there and he'd tip off in the evening for a few hours and he'd leave me making the hay and he'd be up wired in a house somewhere. So this thing, it's alternating current, of course. So this is the thing. Trip every switch to make sure there's no leak. Because if there's a leak, you're paying for electricity that's not being used for anything. It's slightly dangerous as well. And you'll just have to identify it. We could have got over that without digging by simply putting a fresh line in outside, tack it down along. It was going in to drive the cooker had its own line. There was the cooker one, the heavy one. It was going in to do the lights, the kettle, and there was a washing machine or something in there, a dishwasher in there. Are you with me now? And there was an outside light. So now, folks, there's 26 minutes. That could be very useful to you. I've dealt with all the matters then with electricity. But just to finish up, folks, I have campaigned for years against the lies of the government. And, of course, I always end up by saying this. This would not happen were the people of Ireland not voting Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. They won't listen. Every one of them knows this. Every one of them have been told this by me, by engineers, by environmental people, law people, and they don't want to know. And when you go in and you go into your ballot box and you vote for one of those, you are doing this to yourself. You're the victim of your own mistake. I just like to throw in that wee bit, but not too powerful on this occasion. Now, folks, I hope that's helpful to you. The solar panels, I don't think they're any good at all for saving money. Your bill won't go down as far as I know, but they will go down a little bit by the amount that you're heating water. And if you're asking anyone for their advice, and there are a lot of people around who will give you advice, make sure you're making the difference between solar panels for your own use, not connected to the electricity grid, and solar panels connected to the electricity grid where you get a rebate on them. Make sure you understand that difference and get that clear. I've made the point about the title of your house. Look at what it's saying. You'd be better get checked by a solicitor. It might be well worth it in the long run. And be careful where you go. I hope I've made it clear. That's what my YouTube channel is all about, folks. Making sure that I don't hear these mistakes after. The amount of people that come to me with mistakes and drawing up maps and things that I would have fixed in a flash is unbelievable. Don't be caught this way. Get it properly checked. And you see, there's big names, big legal terms in title documents, and there has to be. There's no way around that. Things like Hedgermans and, whale leaves and all that. But, I mean, you can't get rid of that. That's the common law. So, throw it into a solicitor and ask his opinion if you're stuck. Be very careful what you sign. When you get out the pen, that's the most dangerous instrument. The pen is mightier than the sword in every way. Good luck, folks. Comment underneath, and the best of luck to you all. And I hope I've helped that person there with his bill. But you're going to be paying massive bills. You will get to the stage where there'll be no electricity. And I'd like to just say too, I see there Intel, somebody printed underneath my video. Thank you very much. Most people who put information under my videos are telling the truth, and it's a great idea. I think that's a fantastic thing, that we can gather information that's out there. But they say that Intel and Leixlip bought Ryan's engines, 11 million for engines. And that shows you that. And then there's a grant coming out. Oh yeah, there was a piece of law passed there. Up to recently, if you made your own electricity, you were not breaking the law. But if you supplied it to a neighbour and charged for it, you were breaking the law. Only the ESB networks was entitled to distribute electricity from 1927 until now. There was a power station in Kingscourt, Gilmers, and it was shut down, and no compensation. But that was to give the ESB a monopoly and under state control. Anyway, we'll not go back there. But the thing about it is, folks, thing about it is the proof that I've been right all along is that industries are not depending on the state anymore. So the state is not a reliable provider of information because it didn't comply with the law. It's a liar. The Irish state lies, 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 and the bigger the lie, the more the people will vote for them, unfortunately. I can't do anything about that, only talk about it. So we're getting to a stage where you provide your own or nothing. And during the blackout, there was a huge sale on generators, and I warned people to take it slow. There's no blackout since. But really, we will get to the stage where all dairy farmers will have to have generators. And I have one. I've two, and yeah, you're going to have this, and that's a sad reflection. They're not able to provide reliable electricity anymore, and that's going to mean that the ordinary person, like my friend here, who's a senior citizen who wrote this letter, is going to be looking for his bit of power. You know something? He might be better by a generator than solar panels. Might be better off by a small diesel generator. You'd save on the units. They're 39.6 on my house, my main house. Used to be 14.6. Anyway, enough said. I've covered that. I hope I've given good advice there. Good luck. We'll see you back soon. Thank you very much.